Good morning, everyone. In 2009, the prominent paper mill in Powerview, Pine Falls, Manitoba, which is located just northeast of Winnipeg, closed, creating wide-sweeping negative economic impacts in the region. Under the leadership of Chief Sheldon Kent of Black River, in collaboration with Broken Head, Hollow Water, and Saugeen First Nations, the FML First Nations Consortium of Manitoba was established to manage sustainable forestry resources in the region. The primary purpose of an FML is to provide a continuous timber supply to wood-using industries. It ensures sustainable forest management practices while allowing for responsible timber harvesting. Alongside the consortium, the Economic Development Council of Manitoba Bilingual Municipalities, or CDEM, has actively engaged with local communities to foster economic revitalization efforts that ensure meaningful economic reconciliation to the First Nations and the region as a whole. Significant progress is underway thanks to the commitment of the Manitoba government to complete a forest inventory of the expansive 800,000 hectare lands, which is about the size of PEI, arguably one of Canada's largest supplies. Today, the FML First Nations Consortium and COKEL Forestry Limited are working on the necessary forest inventory to receive the license. As supporting stewards of the land, COKEL is well versed in taking care of the forest in the sustainable manner, as is the First Nations. This project is creating a model not only for reconciliation of sustainable forestry, but also provides an opportunity to learn how Indigenous land management and economic development can support the efforts in achieving Capitalism 2.0, a term we've heard frequently during the meetings. Allain, you've been an advisor to the project since the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the history of the project to provide some context?
Thank you, Margot. Allain, I'm retired. And since retirement, like about a year ago, I've been working day and night. But it's been a great adventure. Former executive director with CDM. Alors, au CDM, j'ai eu l'opportunité de travailler avec les municipalités bilingues du Manitoba. Et puis, je vis dans une communauté métisse, la communauté de Saint-Laurent, communauté qui a été reconnue à Washington, au musée de Washington. Et puis, nous avons une communauté dont je suis très fier et qui a beaucoup donc, collaboré et travaillé avec les Premières Nations. Alors, ça fait un peu partie de mon ADN. Alors, c'était naturel pour moi, sur le plan du leadership, de pouvoir travailler avec les Premières Nations. So, basically, I come from a Métis community, St. Laurent, Manitoba. We always have fun and say that that's where the center of the world is, but actually it's not. But for those who don't know where Manitoba is located, like we're the center of Canada, that's where the heart of Canada beats. CDM is basically like Madeleine, who's now the new CEO, like will explain, but we've been the motor, like not only for economic development in the bilingual municipalities, but we've created a whole network that is like represented all across Canada, whether it's the territories, the province. So we have a huge network. So we always say, like for people to remember the acronym, you see them, they're ready. So we've created Ready Canada too. So we have a Canada-wide type of organization. Now, how did that came about that we work that closely with the First Nation? It's very simple. 2009, fiasco. Everything closed down. And the provincial government at the time was very generous. They put $1 million on the table. And they said to all the NGOs, the organizations, the economic development organization, do something. We need to revitalize this economy. We need to help, like those communities, they were falling apart. The service industry, everything was closing. Crime rate was going up. You can imagine what happened to resource areas. Like it was the same scenario with many other communities across the country, especially when you rely on the paper mill. So we've tried at the beginning to organize things in a fashion where, like, we went and get some help from the University of Manitoba in partnership with Université Trois-Rivières, which is the University du Québec at Trois-Rivières, which was very specialized in revitalizing like the economy, like in areas where they lose their paper mill or their main industry. And it was a great partnership. We got the industry involved, some major players like from Manitoba, from BC. At one of our forums, we had about 100 industries at the table. And we've developed an integrated approach where everything was used, because three of the conditions that was in the FML, the Forest Management License, were that you need to use 100% of the tree. You need to make sure that there's employment for the, especially for the First Nation people that are mainly like scattered all around that area we're talking about, which is about the size of Prince Edward Island. So we're talking all of the northeast like of Manitoba. And the third, not the least, you have to respect the environment. So the industry was quite open to that, and we had a good game plan, and we kept working, and the $1 million kind of, vanished away. And it came to a point where we were just about ready to go. And as you all know, in 1982, like Section 35, there's an obligation to consult with the First Nation. And you have to go through an engagement process. So that was also on the table, but we were very careful. And at the time, the Premier of the province was always telling me, like, Louis, you make sure you talk with the First Nation. And at the same time, they had a huge hydro project. Chief Kent will probably talk about it later. But heavy negotiations were going on with the province. And he was warning me. I said, no, don't worry. We have an ECDEV rep, from Sacking, and he's at the table, and things are going well. All to a point where when we just were about at the end of our resource, and we didn't have much money left for the project, and we've sent our delegates to Naturalia in Ontario. So it was quite an expensive trip for at the time. And I asked, okay, is everybody well represented? And one of my employees said, well, Louis, there's only one problem. We left the rep from Sacking. And then he saw by the color of my reaction, my emotions, that I was very upset. So I told him oh, you left the Indian home. That's pretty smart. And I was very upset at that point because I knew that we were in trouble. And that's where I've went and hired someone that was helping with an HR firm, and I told him I need to meet with the chief. I need to engage in a true dialogue, and that was the beginning of our partnership with the First Nation. That's where I met Chief Kent, and at that meeting we more or less said, okay, let's work together and let's make sure we can turn things around. So I can go on and on, but you have quite a few guests, and I'm sure I'll give a chance to the others to speak a little bit.
Thank you, Louis. That's really important context as we move forward in the conversation. So, Chief Kent, you're here with the FML Consortium, but you're also the chief of Black River First Nation. What's your thoughts on the significance of the project, not just for the region, but more specifically for the First Nations people and the partnership?
Thank you, Margot, for the question, but good morning to everybody. Nice to be here this morning to come and have a discussion and share our opinions. For my community and our communities, Indigenous First Nation communities throughout the country, many of us are struggling to find employment. We live with high unemployment rates in our communities. We're struggling below. Many of our people are living below the poverty line. It's a real challenge for us. So with the forestry initiative that's been in our area for over 100 years, they were harvesting timber from our area. And our community members would receive the minimal low jobs. When I say that is when it was harvest season during the winter months, that's when our people would go work, and then they would cut with chainsaws while you'd see the municipalities, the townships of Pine Falls, Powerview, Lac de Bonnie, they were right in there with the big contracts they would receive. They'd get the majority of the work. And of course, where they took all the wood supply to in Pine Falls, the paper mill. It was the paper mill and the township that received all the executive positions. And we, as the Indigenous people, were on the outside watching. We couldn't get jobs in there. The only way you can get a job in that mill was if we relocated into the township and bought a house and went and rent there. But of course, we come through a time of, it was real challenging for us to find employment. Our people had real struggles. The Indian agent would give you a permit to leave your reserve for 7 hours, and if you breached that, they would issue a warrant for your arrest. So our people have had real struggles. When the paper mill when it was about to close, it was called the Tembec Company, and Tembec approached us, and I was chief then. They came and asked me, Chief, we need a band council resolution from you to take to the federal government to go and ask for assistance to keep the paper mill going. My first reaction was, if that mill closed tomorrow, it wouldn't affect my community because my people aren't working. We didn't have sustainable jobs. And that's what I told the Tembec representative. And his face was just, for them, it's their livelihood because they had employment 365 days of the year, and their families benefited while our people just work seasonally. I know as a young person growing up in my community, my father cut wood in the bush, and we would cut them into cords, 4 feet, 8 feet, a square cord. Anyway, we would work for a few months, and then the contract would expire, and we were done. We'd finish our contracts probably by December, January. Just make some money before Christmas. You can get Christmas gifts for our family and our loved ones, and that was the routine for us for a lot of years. But anyway, I think I'm not answering your questions, but the point today with the forestry management license that's there, one of the things for us and for me, for a lot of years, I watched industry take resources from our lands, whether it was mining, whether it was forestry, or if they were taking the core for gravel to fix the roads. We watched all that happen. Meanwhile, before colonization came in and the settlers, our people lived off the lands freely. We were all over the place. We weren't stuck in little reservations like we are today. We were all over the place, and we lived off the land. Mother Earth provided for us, sustained us since millennium. We had no value. We had no concept of money. So when Canada came to be and Britain came this way, they changed everything. Even when we were growing up, when I was growing up, we're trapping on the line. We're out trapping on our trap lines, and we were getting good money for furs. And then the animal activists killed all that for us. That was a way that we were able to make money. That's how we were taught. That's how my grandfather, his dad, that's how they survived. There was no concept of money before. But today, fast forward to 2024, economic development is the way for us to go. Economic reconciliation to improve our livelihoods for our citizens on our First Nation communities. It's a real struggle for them to find employment outside of our communities. I know firsthand, both my children finish University of Manitoba, University of Winnipeg, and then they go to job fairs to try to get employment. They can't even get a job inside the malls to go and be a check teller there. So one of our concepts for me personally is we have to create our own industry. We have to create our own employment and economic development. Then we're in control. And we can hire our own people, give them something to aspire for. And so the forest license that's in our area, and Louis talked about how vast of the land that area is. That's just a small portion of what's available in the province. There's 90 million square acres of crown lands throughout our territories, but we're looking at a small section, 850,000 hectares. And what we want is we want that license. We'll establish industry for us based on our values, First Nations values. And one of the big things that our elders have reminded me, make sure when you harvest from there, you make sure you go replant. You have to make it sustainable, and that's one of our main goals. And I put a challenge out to Louis when I first met him, and when we first came to this conference 4 years ago. We had a conversation about what would we like to see. We'd like to see it done in the fashion where it's environmentally friendly. That's why we set the bar high. And so you'll hear from one of our colleagues here that whatever forestry industry we create from that forest that's available to us, it has to be green, and we have to make sure we reforest. We replant for every tree we take. We're supposed to plant 15 trees, so it'll continue to sustain us in our culture, our teachings. We call planet Earth Mother Earth. We have to take care of Mother Earth, and forestry is one component. And so when we harvest from her, when we take the trees from our areas, we have to make sure we plant. So we'll also have an opportunity to determine what kind of trees do we replace, what we take out of there. Because if you think about it, they've been harvesting our trees for 100 years. And when you go into the forest today, you don't just walk into an area where it's all jack pine, or if it's all spruce, or if it's black spruce or balsam. It's all mixed. There's aspen in there, there's birch. It's a mixed forest. Before it was, and I can't attest to this because I wasn't around 100 years ago, but it must have been all just like one area of all jack pine and clean. And today it's just there's a whole bunch of trees growing in there. So when we harvest, we'll be able to determine what we want to reforest with. So that's a little bit about me and what we want to see. Economic development is a game changer for us, for our nations. We'll create employment. Our youth will have something to look forward to. Rather than going to universities, get their degrees, then struggle to try find employment in regular society. It's a real challenge for many of our people. So we'll create our own wealth, we'll create our own economic development, we'll create jobs for ourselves, we'll sustain ourselves, and it'll change the way our communities are. Hopefully getting rid of that high unemployment and the poverty that our people live in. So the forest and this initiative is very dear to me, crucial to us. I want to see us be successful, and I think we're on an excellent start. And I thank the CDM group that's been helping us along the way. The provincial government has been supportive over the last little while. We had a change in Manitoba. I don't know if you're aware, but we elected our first Indigenous Ojibwe Anishinaabe premier in our province. We're very optimistic that he's going to do good things for us and with us, work alongside of us. But we'll have to see. It'll be 1 year for him coming up in the fall that he's been the sitting premier. So we'll have to wait and see how things unfold as we go forward. But one thing for sure, we're going to continue going forward. There's no point in us we're not going to look back. Whatever challenges come our way, the 4 nations in our area that have this license have the same vision, that we want to see economic development and employment for our people. Miigwech.
Well, no, thank you for the inspirational vision for the project. So, Bruce, COKEL has been in the forestry industry for 20 years, Indigenous-owned company. Chief Kent has outlined a pretty ambitious vision. How is COKEL and the work you're doing helping to achieve that?
Back when COKEL first started, they had somewhat the same vision where we seen where there was a lot of opportunities that were going out to non-Indigenous companies. So COKEL basically put the company together to correct that. The owner was a forest ranger at the time and been with Alberta Forest Service for some years. And when he put the company together, it was created based on bridging the gap of First Nations working in mainstream society. We provide opportunities for First Nations, work with First Nations and mainstream society to facilitate proper forest management procedures, all the provincial regulations and stuff like that were written by professional foresters whom we employ a lot of as consultants to us. The three people that we have on a team working for the FML project for the GBOC consortium, between the three of them, they have 140 years experience in the forest industry. So they, we like to say, they basically wrote the regulations that people have to follow in order to obtain FMLs. With that, there's a lot of work that goes into it, negotiating, conversing back and forth with the government bodies to make sure that everything is in place, so that at the end of it all, we like to keep the ball in their court, so that they're not asking us for answers. We're always asking them. Kind of keeps them on their toes and keeps the project moving forward. Something that, coming from a company that is 100% Indigenous owned, it's a game changer.
Well, congratulations on the work that you're doing there. We're going to shift just a little bit for a moment. Trevor, you are an entrepreneur, connector from Norway House First Nation, Cree Nation, apologies. You're not directly involved in the project, but I think there's a lot of parallels to the work that you're doing and lessons that can be learned and applied. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on how this project is influencing not just the FML, but some of the broader projects in Manitoba?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Margot, and thank everybody for joining today. So I was asked to join late in the game here, this panel. And so I took the opportunity. And I think that as Indigenous people, just building off of what Chief said, that we need to take every opportunity that arises. So I am from Norway House Cree Nation. It's about 8 hours north of Winnipeg, Manitoba. And just a little bit of context. Last year, I joined my first conference here as an employee of Norway House Cree Nation. We own a couple businesses, which I was working for at the time. And this year, I'm coming back into the capacity of a business owner with Norway House Cree Nation being my first client, which I'm really proud of. So our company, my business partner couldn't be here today. He was planning on it, but he had some family to attend to. But our business is strategies and community engagement. So I consider myself a connector. I'm very blessed in the fact that my jobs in the last 3 or 4 years was being sent all across Canada to find these formulas that work for the First Nations in their region. And I'm very blessed that leadership opened the doors, opened their books, showed me their cards. And I want to acknowledge Chief Skydeer, the Ganawaki Nation. I spent Sunday with her. We went and had lunch. She took me around the community, showing me what they're doing with their economic development and how they're taking back their future, and so they could steer that boat where they need to. I believe that hearing out what they're doing with the FML, the old Tembec FML, will allow me to take those formulas and bring it back to Norway House Cree Nation, which is in another region of Manitoba. But the wins that other First Nations chief has and their willingness to show us their cards and share those formulas allows me to take it not only to Norway House Cree Nation, but all of the nations that I've built relationships over the years. I like to use the analogy of the drum. All across the nation, different First Nations have drums, and some are louder than others when it comes to economic development and these types of things. And some are quieter, but connectors like me and people like me all across Canada, what we want to do is synchronize these drums so they're louder, they're beating together, we're sharing information, we're sharing knowledge, and the door is always open to non-Indigenous entities, and I think that's absolutely the key. Like for that collaboration. The competition is over. Let's look forward, like Chief said. I'm here in the capacity to learn, just like you folks, and to bring that back to the right people, to leadership, and so it could be implemented and those drums could get louder. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the panel today. Thank you.
Thanks, Trevor. It was a pleasure having you as part of the Manitoba contingency last year. And as someone who got to know you just shortly before that, I've certainly seen the work that you've been doing, and it's impressive. Madeleine, you're now the current executive director of CDEM. You have inherited this project. Why is CDEM such a huge supporter? What makes this so important?
So to build on Louis' overview, CDEM is a very unique economic development agency, provincial agency, who works for the bilingual municipalities. In Manitoba, the French community is a minority community who lives within the English communities across the province. We were created by these municipalities, and our members are across the province. Many of our members, of course, because all of the First Nations and the different communities are across the province, share resources, are neighbors, and it's important to collaborate. This project is key. Not only is it economic reconciliation, it's also part of being very proactive and responsibly managing our natural resources and acknowledging that the stewards of the lands were the First Nations, and they have stewarded it responsibly. And we want these solutions to continue in Manitoba on a sustainable level. We want these solutions to come from Manitoba, to be managed in Manitoba. Our First Nations on this first FML are here. They know this land. It is their land. They are leading this, and we are there collaborating and supporting this. It is critical, these collaborations, because it will be beneficial for all. When these mills closed, it had a devastating impact on the communities around, and that is a reality of what occurs when these decisions occur without having thought of the long-term impact. So we are here today to continue to support this and to continue to work with the members of the First Nations on this FML and all of the projects for the impactful economic community development. How's that for brief?
That's perfect. So, Chief, we're going to come back to you for a second. There were several things that you said over dinner last night that really struck me. One was that you saw resources leave by train and then plane, but that the forest had sustained since the beginning. And then you went on to talk about the medicines, the Thunderbird, all of the non-forestry items within the FML area that are culturally significant, medicinally significant, sacred lands. Can you share more about sort of the significance of the forest overall and how those other aspects play into the business plan?
Sure, I can share. The forest. Well, we call it our mother. Our mother provides for us. It's sustained us since the beginning of time. And so when industry come in to our areas and started harvesting the resources, like there's a gold mine in our area, opened up in the early 1900s. It's still running. It's called the Beset Gold Mine. They've taken 2 million ounces of gold from that area since they started operating. And as a kid and listening to my grandfather and my parents talk, they used to work there, and there was a railway line that used to come close to our community. It was Pine Falls, and there was an old bush road. They would take their gold there and they'd put it on the train, and then the train would bring it to Winnipeg, then they'd ship it out. And then as we evolved more now our resources are leaving in planes. Finished products are leaving in planes. They're leaving in ships. So industry has extracted a lot of resources from our areas without consulting us. And the last night I was sharing with you, when they're extracting, they don't consider the plant life there. The plant life in our areas, to our knowledge keepers, knowledge teachers, our medicinal knowledge people, they know the medicines. And as I'm getting older in life, I started learning the different herbs and the different plants as well. And so I do know we have medicines for dementia. We have medicines for if somebody has a stroke, for example. We have medicines that can pretty much bring them right back. You know, because when you have a stroke, you lose the left side or your right side completely, and if you don't get to the doctor quick enough, it doesn't return. But our knowledge people have medicines that can fix that, and I saw that firsthand because I've experienced it firsthand. I had a stroke in 2013. I lost the whole left side. I couldn't do any of this. Touch my head. Anyway, they took me to the hospital. And then I wanted to get out of the hospital and go see my uncle, who I knew had medicines for this. I went and saw him, and he took me into the sweat lodge, made that medicine for me, and then I'm probably 98% fully recovered from that stroke. But so the medicines that grow in the area, that's one example. But when industry comes in and they don't consult with us, they went in there and they just harvest the timber, and they destroyed areas where that medicine grew. And so one of our struggles is we have to go find where that medicine is. But there's other medicines like the dementia medicines that are there, the heart medicines we have, the knowledge, because this medicine has been around for thousands of years. And so our people are reluctant to share that information with industry because people, I guess, I don't know what the word is, but money drives a lot of things for us. So our knowledge teachers won't share that information openly because they're afraid they're going to go and harvest that medicine. They'll use the science and turn it into a pill for capitalism, where they'll make money from it. Our teachings is that our mother provides that to us, and you use that to help others, but not for profit. Maybe that'll be a whole nother challenge for us later down the road. But when we have the forest license, we as the stakeholders know where the significant areas are. We know where those medicines are. We can just when we're doing the forest license, we can just mark off an area and say, stay away from this area. Don't go in there. And then that way, when we're issuing the permits to whoever's going to go and harvest the timber, they'll know to stay out of there. And they don't need to know anything else further than that. But that's a way of protecting what we have. I shared about a thunderbird. Part of our culture as Indigenous people, going back to the creation story, when God created man and woman, it's similar to the Bible stories. He created man and woman. And then the first man and first woman had 10 children, 5 girls, 5 boys, and Great Spirit saw that the children can't make children with each other. So he called upon the winged family, the ones with the feathers, and 10 of those birds came down, the thunderbird, the eagle, the crane. They came down, and because God is great, he just created, then they turned into women for those boys. And then the same thing with the four-leggeds, the bear, the animals, and they turned into men so they can procreate with them. But that's our creation story. That I'll share that at another day, not today. But the thunderbird was one of the ones that came. So in our area, there's an area where the thunderbirds, there's nests there. And when Forestry, when they were harvesting the timber, they went in there with their machines and they knocked all those boulders around. The thunderbird nest consists of stones like this and goes round and round, and it's huge because for us, the thunderbirds are creatures during the thunderstorms. You'll hear them, that thunder, the lightning. That's the thunderbird. That's their spirit. But that's an area where they had nesting grounds, and it got destroyed. So the elders went back up after we made a big fuss and said, no, paper mill, you don't go in that area. You don't go harvest there anymore. We're going to go protest you. And so they stayed away from there. The elders went back again after, and they saw those nests were all fixed again. So the spiritual beings, the thunderbirds, fixed those nesting areas. So we just have that area marked off in our area. But there's similar stories like that throughout all our nations in our areas where we live. So the forest is sacred to us, and we got to take care of her. Does that answer your question?
It does. I could sit and talk with you for days about this. Trevor, you've been involved in a lot of projects that involve building capacity within First Nations. And so we're confident that with this forestry project, for every forestry job that's created, there's going to be 3 secondary jobs created within the region. So that's a lot of skilled labor, a lot of new jobs. How do Indigenous communities work with academia, with the project, with industry to be able to ensure that there's appropriate training and capacity building to be able to make sure that they're able to keep and make that employment local?
Well, I believe that with that, it's community engagement. And when I say community engagement, it's not just talking to leadership, to chief and council. It's engaging with the elders and it's engaging with the youth. I believe getting that message across at a young age, junior high, high school, about what is happening, educating at that level, so they could be change agents to go home and maybe educate, auntie and uncle and grandma about what's going on and what these projects mean. Building off of what Chief Kent said earlier, I just want to share a story. Back in 1998, when I was 18 years old, I grew up near Pine Falls, and I went to apply for a job, and I got looked at so funny. I walked out of that place feeling embarrassed, and I know that probably echoes for a lot of our people. And flash forward to 2024, now we're sitting here talking about taking over the FML, forest management, being in the executive roles. So not only do we get to steer that ship in the way of sustainability and with our values, but we also make a good living and put in industry and everything else aside back home. If mom and dad are bringing home a good solid living, they could give those opportunities to their children and change the course. When I was young, it wasn't like this. My dad didn't dress in a suit. He didn't sit up on stages and talk about game changers for generations to generations. So it's something that Wob said, and I might get it wrong, but the economic horse pulls the social cart. And that's what we really need to focus on. And we could fill in the blank: forestry, mining. It doesn't matter. We get in those roles where we're bringing in that living, where we're comfortable. Maybe comfortable is not the right word, but where we know that something's coming into the future that we could pass along to our kids in a good way, and not just in the winter time for 3 months fighting the snow, getting those entry-level jobs. And that capacity building is from the top down and from the bottom up, as in our youth, as in our elders, as in our leadership. It's like a braid. All 3 apart might be a little bit brittle, but you braid them together and we're stronger like that. And that capacity building turns into home ownership. It turns into entrepreneurs. It turns into opportunities. So I believe that the forestry, the FML that we're talking about today in that region will have untold positive tangents that we can't really articulate or measure right now. But let's look back in 10 years. Let's look back what's going on, and you really see what I mean.
Thank you for that. Madeleine, how do the non-Indigenous communities in the region support this work?
Well, I think one of the reasons we are involved with this, besides it being the right thing to do, is the FML process involves a lot of, well, first of all, it involves government. It involves First Nations and communities around. There's a consulting process. There's expertise coming from the right areas. So in the process, there is that collaboration, which should have always happened throughout all of this, that consultation to discuss this, because after all, this is a winning formula for everyone. What we're ensuring is that we're sustainably managing our resources. We're ensuring the jobs. We're recognizing the importance of the First Nations as stewards of the land and being able to determine what's best for these resources and for their people. So the communities will be involved in the consulting process and how this plan works out, and we'll be collaborating from that standpoint. So it's truly a transversal, en français on dit transversal. It's a collaboration that crosses across all the areas. So it's not a lateral, horizontal top-bottom approach. It is really a collaborative model. So I think the communities have a lot of opportunities and to be part of this solution, to support this initiative, which will have impact for years to come. So it's really a long term. So from that standpoint, that's what we're seeing as the opportunity here.
So over the course of the last 36 hours, we've heard lots of references to Capitalism 2.0, and not always using that phrase, but the concept of needing to change how we do business and to be more aware of and integrated with some of the social things that are happening in our world to solve problems. And I see significant parallels between some of your comments on the panel and the challenges that we're facing as a world and what others refer to as Capitalism 2.0. Bruce, am I right in seeing some of those parallels? Is there opportunities here that we can learn from?
Absolutely. There's opportunities everywhere you look, as long as you look deep, be it negative or positive. First Nation people can benefit from both sides of it with the right direction and stuff. Everybody can be successful. Like Chief Kent elaborated to, this project is a game changer for the 4 First Nations that are holding that license right now. With that, the employment it'll create, they have about 300,000 cubic meter annual allowable cut. Spray Lakes sawmill in Alberta has approximately the same allowable cut per year, and they employ 320 people, 365 days a year, not including all the outside services that come along with it. So it is, it is a game changer.
I'm going to open that up to everybody on the panel. How do you see Indigenous economic development philosophies and practices influencing and supporting on a broader basis Capitalism 2.0 and changing how we do business more broadly, globally?
I'll go first, since I'm close beside you. Economic Development 2.0. It's exciting. It's an exciting time for us. I'm very optimistic of the opportunities that's going to come from the forest. I know in my community, I'm coming into my 24th year serving as the chief, and then I'll have an election next year, and hopefully my members will see the value and what we're trying to create for the future of our community. But economic development is the way for us to go forward, because what it does is it creates confidence in our people, where we've been through so many struggles, so many policies that have held us back over the years. They even created laws in 1910. I don't know if you're aware of this, but in 1910 they did the Natural Resources Transfer Act, or that's when they introduced law where we're as First Nations people in this country, we couldn't hire a lawyer to represent us to say, hey, that's not right. Don't go into this area. If a lawyer represented us, that lawyer lost their right to practice law in Canada. So we had no lawyers to represent us up until the early 50s, and then that's when it started changing. Then you started seeing our people come out and saying, this is not right, this is our right, this is our right to the land, this is our right to the water, you can't just destroy it. So when we talk about economic development 2.0, it's the future. We need to be at those tables. For my community, 19 years ago, we opened up our casino, and it's owned by 7 First Nations in Manitoba. It's called South Beach. If any of you are in Manitoba, make sure come and check out South Beach. It's a successful casino. You'll see if you go to the provincial owned casinos in Winnipeg, you'll see a difference in how they run their facility as opposed to ours. Ours is customer service based. You'll see somebody when you walk in at the door with a big smile. They'll open the door for you. Welcome in. It's not like that with our competitors. So when I'm saying it's exciting times. Once our forestry initiative takes off, once we start creating those businesses for our communities, you're going to see a whole vast of young people being very optimistic in life. It's going to change the way they look at things because there's more employment there. Our casino employs 220 people year round, but it's for me, it's an hour drive for my members to go work there. But if I put something right in my community, if it's a biomass or biochar or a sawmill in my community with a hatchery to grow our trees to reforest, it's going to be just right in the community. They don't have to go anywhere to go look for employment. It'll be there, and it'll be the same with our partners, Sagging and Hollow Water, Broken Head. They'll all have that same ability to create that industry right in their community, so their people don't have to go out to go and look for employment. You don't have to drive far. It'll be right there. And so the kids are going to see that. And they're gonna see success. They're gonna see their mishums and kookums and uncles and aunties, their parents working and providing for them. It's gonna change the way our lives are in our communities right now. The unemployment is so high. There's no employment there. The only jobs in our communities is you either go work in the school or you go work for the band office, and everybody wants to be the chief, but we only have one chief, and that's my role. That's what I tell our young people. Go get educated, live a healthy life, then maybe you'll be the chief one day. But you gotta aspire for some positive change, and you live a good life, you're a good role model. And so what we do in our area in Manitoba, because there's 63 First Nations in our communities, and I know Norway House is a progressive community. It's nice to see Trevor here as well with us on the panel, because they're doing a lot of innovative things in the far north. But this changes everything for us. It gives a whole different perspective on life for those young kids growing up. They're going to see successful businesses. They're going to see positive role models, and that'll change. And then as a society in Canada, and then hopefully global after, we'll start working better with the Indigenous peoples of the land, and because we're all human beings at the end of the day. There's only one God, and we pray different ways. We're gifted different ways, and we want good lives for our people, and we want to have that good life of being successful in whatever field you chose to go down that path for. And that's the big dream. But I dream big. I have bigger dreams that we want to achieve. And so this is the first step, or the second step. Casino is first one. Now the forestry is another initiative, but there's lots of other potential for us. Miigwech.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I'll add and build on Chief Kent and try to summarize it the best way I can. We've heard with Michael McCain how Capitalism 2.0 is a game changer, and that's been the words of Chief Kent since we've began. Like in 2016, the province of Manitoba signed an historical deal with the four First Nations. And at that time, what was well understood is that the industry was no longer the leader. And we took our model like in Ontario. There's 5 out of the 31 FMLs in Ontario that are Indigenous-led initiative. One of them is Lac Seul, and quickly talk about hockey because we're all fans of the Oilers. We got disappointed last night, but my son used to play hockey in Dryden, and we used to go to Sioux Lookout for some of the games. And I've seen Sioux Lookout over 3 years falling apart, and things weren't going too well. And at one point, the government of Ontario understood and signed a deal with them. And Lac Seul today, if you look at it, they're the ones who bring they supply all the wood to the paper mill in Dryden, that's owned by Domtar. And the same guys that couldn't make it in the white man industry are now in charge of the supply. They're never late. Not only that, I think Trevor has mentioned the indirect jobs. Now they own their health facility. It's a $110 million investment. The Canadian Tire, the Tim Horton, and the list is long. Sioux Lookout this year ended up being one of the top team in Ontario, the junior A. And at the time, they just couldn't pay. They couldn't afford their players. That's a turnaround. And I think when we mention Capitalism 2.0, here we have a good example. And probably the scholar that has the best understood that was John Raston Saul with his book, My Fur Country, Mon Pays Métis. Some of those core values that we need to go back to, and that's what Mr. McCain has more or less explained, are that those values that we've learned on equality, the importance of equality. Everybody has to be a winner. And for the First Nation, that's key, and that's the values that they've given us over time. It's the well-being, not what they've been trying to put on our nose for years and years, order. So it's not order, it's well-being. They always took care of they've always been good stewards of the land, and that's what we want to continue to do.
That is a fantastic summary, that there is so many different aspects to success, to well-being, to community, and just making sure that we're all looking out for each other in that collaborative way. I've had such an honor in working with all of you. Rural Manitoba Economic Development isn't directly involved in the project on a day-to-day basis, but certainly very interested in how it unfolds and how it supports all of rural Manitoba. And these are not the only First Nations projects that I've been involved with, Indigenous projects I'm involved with. And I can say that every time I sit down and talk with people like yourselves, I come away inspired, I come away hopeful, I come away very optimistic about the future that is before us. So thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for being part of this, and thank you for charting the way to a much healthier, well community. Miigwech.